Alright, Diablo 4 players, some massive tuning and reworks for aspects in Season 10. Talking about some pretty big nerfs over here. Hydra taking a massive nerf, going from 1.5x, and if you put this on a two-hander, that's 3% increased damage per mana spent, and now this is basically cut in half to 0.5. So that's a massive nerf to the Hydra Sorc. There's also another massive nerf to specifically the Jaguar not being able to get the bonuses of the Plains Power, basically the double dipping that you'd get with the Spiritborn, which is one of the best Spiritborn builds. And then on top of that, we're getting some changes to the bosses. Now, even though I'm going to mention a bunch of nerfs, keep in mind, guys, these brand new powers in Season 10 and the unique powers that you can equip are actually going to be overall buffs, even though it sounds bad when we look at some of these numbers for these massive changes. I want to say keep in mind we're getting some massive buffs as well, so there is a give and a take here. All right, so for starters over here, let's start off with the changes on the Barbarian. So we're getting a change to the Battle Mad aspect. This just gives you another 20x damage, but with the Barbarian, a lot of these multipliers are even stronger because, of course, Barbarian has two-handers, so this is like an okay buff, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. I want to be real. I think this one is actually pretty interesting, though. So Ancestral Force, which is with the HOTA Barbarian, this is a massive buff over here. So it used to give you 25x, but again, two-hander, 50x, right? It's now going to 60, which means 120x, but the stat already has increased damage against the bosses. It's doubled. So this stat over here goes from 60, of course, to a two-hander, which is 120, and then you go into doubled against bosses, so you get 240x damage. And remember, guys, in the mid-season of Season 9, we did also get a buff to the HOTA Barb, which was basically 65% of its base damage increase. So maybe HOTA will finally be great again, and I really hope so, because HOTA Barb was one of my favorite ways to play the Barbarian. So hopefully, again, this will be a brand new way to play. And the Wantan Rupture, this used to actually be quite meta, but how it used to work is your Rupture does not remove the bleeding damage from the enemies, and then it could only occur like every 10 seconds. And then now it's double your Rupture's skewer radius, and bleed durations are increased by 30 to 60%, and that's all bleed duration. So Bleed Barb definitely going to be a lot stronger with this. With Druid, with the balance aspect, its previous ability was to increase your maximum spirit by up to 90 and generation by 50x while Grisly Rage is active. Now, your maximum spirit is increased by just a flat number of 50, and casting a skill with a cooldown increases spirit regeneration by up to 25 per second for 8 seconds. That's a pretty decent amount too. And then we have Wild Rage. So previously, your companions would gain the bonus from the Bestial Rampage key passive. Now, when you cast a companion skill, there's a 20 to 40% chance to activate an equipped companion skill and reduce its cooldown by 5 seconds. So that's going to be pretty good. I think that Ravens might be kind of something to consider if you are going to be a Druid player in Season 10. And then there's also Stormclaw's aspect, so it used to make it so the crits with the Shred will deal 60 to 80% of the damage as lightning damage to the target and surrounding enemies. Now crits with Shred deal 40 to 60% of the damage dealt as lightning damage to the target and surrounding enemies over here. So I guess this is a nerf. Again, some of these are kind of strange, but again, keep in mind there's a lot of other buffs with the powers as well as the Chaos Uniques. And then we have Storm Chaser's aspect. So Tornado would seek up to 5 targets and deal 50x increased damage. Now Tornado drags non-elite enemies with it and deals 10 to 20% increased damage for each enemy or object inside of it. I'm actually kind of curious to see what it means by object, because could you make the boulder tornado? Is that what we're trying to do? That'd be cool too. Or if they mean destructibles, because that's going to be a really weird build if you have to get destructibles inside, because that means when you come up to the boss, if there's not extra enemies, yeah, then there's going to be ZDPS in terms of your min-max in terms of damage. So that's going to be interesting. There's also aspect of the Great Feast. This is now into the Necromancer. So while you have active minions, your summons would deal up to 45 increased damage, and it would drain a essence per second per minion. And then while you have no active minions, you get up to 45x damage, but 7 essence drains per second from you. And then now, while you have active minions, your summons deal up to 55 increased damage, but each minion drains 2 over here. So there's technically a buff over here. It's 10x, but it's small. But this one over here, now it's 14 essence per second, so that's a pretty massive change over there if you're just playing solo. And then with the Bloodseeker's aspect, so the previous one was with Bloodlance, where it would deal up to 30x increased damage to its primary and per lance enemy, and then while you're healthy, the Bloodlances deal up to 45x increased critical strike damage. Now, it's 15x increased damage to its primary target per lance enemy, and then while healthy, your Bloodlance deals up to 35 increased critical strike damage over there. Not really sure why this is really getting changed. I didn't feel like Bloodlance was too OP, but we get a little bit of a nerf here. And then we have Reaping Lotus. So this one, it has to do with Sever. It would no longer return its sentence splits into 3 specters that expand out from its apex, then it would deal 200% of its normal damage. Now it's just getting a damage multiplier of another 40. So that's a little bit of a buff over there. Then Aspect of Fell Gluttony. So previously the Golem active also causes your golem to erupt. It would deal like 600% like physical damage to the surrounding enemies, and our golem consumes corpses to reduce its cooldown. Now it's going to do the same thing, but it's going to make it so your golem damage is increased by 40x. So maybe you can consider golem as well. And then with the Cadaverous aspect, consuming a corpse increases the damage of your core and ultimate skills by up to 7x for 5 seconds, and then up to 35. And then it's getting changed over here. It says that it's consuming corpse increases your damage. So now it's like everything can use this versus, again, a very specific thing. So that's cool. And then with the Blade Dancers, now we're into Rogue. Rogue actually only got like 1 change on this patch update, which is really weird, but it's a pretty massive buff here. So this has to do with Blade Dancers aspect. So previously, twisting blades, they would spin around you. It still does the same thing, but the damage multiplier got increased by quite a bit. Normally, if you're playing a Twisting Blade Rogue, you put this on the 2-hander, and so instead of being 160, we're now at 240. So that's a pretty big buff. As far as I'm aware of, this and Death Trap kind of trade places with the rank 1 Rogue build quite frequently as the season has progressed. So it's going to be interesting to see if Twisting Blades is going to be the #1 build. Remember, guys, with some of the bonuses with the brand new Chaos Uniques, you can really pump up the Poison Imbuement, and its base damage is going to get all increased off of this. And again, those are going to be working with the Spinning Blade, so you get even more damage with this. And this almost may secure this as the top tier build, considering I don't see Death Trap getting any buffs that are going to be something that not just a flat damage multiplier, because everything is going up with this season here. So Twisting Blades Rogue is kind of, I guess, returning, even though it was already pretty good. So I'd say that's probably one of the builds to think about. Then with the Sorc, with aspect of Charge Flash, after Charge Bolts hits enemies 50 times, the next 3 casts of Charge Bolts become waves that pierce and crit. Now, while you have Crackling Energy, Charge Bolt spends a charge to also fire a wave, dealing 140% of Crackling Energy damage in the area. Now, there are some pretty massive, I'm talking like 1000x plus damage to the Crackling Energy. I think that this season they want Sorcs to use Crackling Energy, so keep that in the back of your mind if you guys are going to be playing PTR, that this could be a good way to play. And then there's also aspect of Piercing Static, which is that the Charge Bolts pierce that deal like to 70 to 35 reduced damage to its target. Now, the third time an enemy is hit by a single cast of Charged Bolts, they spawn 3 to 5 new Charged Bolts. And then this is the nerf with the Hydra. Now, I know it sounds kind of bad. I ain't gonna lie, it is a pretty big nerf, but there's such a big buff, I don't even think it's gonna matter. So, previously, Hydra would deal up to 1.5, but again, 200, it's 3%, increased damage per mana that you had, so it would consume all of it, and with like 300 mana and times 3, you get a big number, right? And then now it's less than half. It is 0.5, so its stats are basically cut by 1/3, basically. Big nerfs over there to the Serpentine aspect. It does the same exact thing, but you're going to be able to stack mana so high. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. Then with Spiritborn, aspect of Bristling Vengeance, so Payback now echoes forward and additionally deals some additional thorns damage. And then now Payback echoes forward and deals up to 150% of your thorns damage along the way. The final echo is larger and deals double the thorns damage, so you can get even more damage with the Thorns Spiritborn build. And then Wild Claws, so Rake would manifest a Spirit Jaguar, which would at a random enemy that deals some damage over here, and now it's going to be even stronger here. And it's cool because Rake was actually a pretty good skill anyways. There's a lot of things that, depending on what you want, like the Rake build was actually good for cooldown, the Gorilla was usually good for like survivability with the barriers, and then Quill Volley was kind of like the best for damage. So now, rebounding, speaking of Quill Volley over here, so how it used to work is Quill Volleys would explode at their apex, and it would return to where they're cast, both dealing up to 55% of the normal damage. Now they explode at their apex and return, and both dealing up to 70% of the normal damage. So if you want to actually play Quill, Quill is getting buffed. Although right now it's all about the poison thorns. Now, another change with the Spiritborn, this is actually a pretty big nerf over here with specifically Plane's Power. So additional strikes no longer benefits from bonuses given by aspects of Plane Power, then additional strike damage increase from 15 to 20%. So that's a pretty big nerf over there. There's also a change with the Eagle Haul. So casting an Eagle skill grants 4 seconds of the Storm Feathers. Then you can, when you evade, you can fling extra feathers at them that would deal 125% of lightning damage and makes all the targets vulnerable. And all skills are now also Eagle skills, which is normal. But now, casting an Eagle skill or evading shoots 6 Storm Feathers, each applying 140% of the lightning damage and applying vulnerable. So again, a little bit of a buff over there. And the Storm Feathers movement speed bonus is doubled and always active, and all skills are Eagle skills. And then with the secondary on the Eagle Haul is for every 4 meters you move, you get increased crit. This would reset after you crit. Now, every other cast is guaranteed critical strike, and you deal 20% vulnerable bonus damage. So that's going to be a nice buff for the Eagle Haul, as I think they want us to move away from the Jaguar, so they're nerfing it and then buffing Eagle. So that's kind of cool. Now, there is another change over here that I want to go over, which is the boss loot is actually seeing a big change in the update. So basically, a lot of the stuff that you would have to do Infernal Hordes for, they're getting removed from the bosses and getting replaced in another area. So Duriel over here no longer drops these uniques. I'll be honest, most of these are kind of mid anyways. Some builds may want Tabalt, Flicker Step, but the Chaos uniques basically outclass all of these, so that's fine. And what is nice, that we are getting the Crown of Lucian over here. I don't know why it's flashing. But also the third blade is being added to Duriel, so that's awesome. Most of these I would say are a good change, except for on Dariel, you no longer can get the Tempest Roar, but Tempest Roar, most people never farm Dariel anyways, let's be honest. This is the worst boss ever. So they removed Tempest Roar, removed Hand of Naz, and then also a Fitting Iris. Radakipalika is a worthy mention, and Banished Lords also is a pretty good item for certain builds, but they're adding in the Bane of Ajah Den, the Lockrun's Talisman. Lockrun's Talisman will be good next season, by the way, for Sorc, because the mana stacking can go crazy. The Basilisk, as well as Umbrecrux, and there's also Galvanic Azurite, which is a brand new item. From the Harbinger of Hatred, they're removing Tusk, Dolmen, Blood Moon Breaches. The Blood Moon Breaches are pretty good. And then also the Blue Rose, Sepizontak, Azarath, X-Falls, Soulbrand. And they're adding the Bane of Ajah Den, Crown of Lucian, Lockrun's Talisman, Basilisk, Umbrecrux, and Third Blade, and Galvanic Azurite. So Greygard, they are adding the Mortarcrux and Endurant Faith, and Hesha E. Hunski, which is a brand new item. Lord Zir, they removed the Bane of Ajah Den, and they added a Vox Omnium, which is the new item. Some of these new items, by the way, guys, will actually see play in Season 10. I know most of these are like pretty bad for a lot of classes. And then Varshon, they're removing the Ring of Midday Hunt. They're adding Shard of Eretha and Miraculous Wake. Those are two awesome items. And then Beast and Ice is getting a Ring of the Midday Hunt. Orivar, the Bane of Ajah Den, is removed, and we're getting the Hesha Kintsugi and the Gospel of Devotees. Again, some of these are newer items. So if you're wondering where do we farm the new items, maybe for the builds, I'll be making an updated build guide that goes kind of over all the good ones. So if you're new here, stay tuned for that. But I figure it was worth mentioning in this video, as we can go over it in, like, you know, it only took us a minute. But anyways, guys, a lot of big changes over here. Let me know, guys, down below what you plan to play for Season 10. Remember, Season 10 is coming out tomorrow for the PTR. And I'm going to tell you for sure, I'm locking in Sorc. Sorc is going to be one of the top tier ones, even though I know with the Serpentine aspect, it sounds pretty bad to get a nerf of cutting your damage by this thing by, you know, 1/3 of the stats that it used to have, but the mana stacking is going to go crazy. I'm already working on by like a build guide, and it's going to be really fun, and I think it's going to be one of the top tier builds that we will see that's not negative damage numbers. But nonetheless, if you're new here and want to see gameplay of Season 10, we're going to be dropping Season 10 gameplay tomorrow, guys. Subscribe, turn the bell if you're new here, and I'll definitely be covering it. But yeah, let me know, guys, what you plan to play, whether it's the class or the build. I'm going to be locking in Hydra Sorc for sure, though.